what story you told. I'm gonna lose my mind.
Turn off the camera.
All right, folks, the Casey Anthony documentary is out on, and if you don't want to listen to her lies and inconsistencies, then we'll just sum it up here for you. Actually, I'm not going to sum it up. There's a YouTuber named 10 to Life who did an amazing kind of comprehensive video. She watched the documentary so that we don't have to, especially if you don't want to give any money. I don't know. And not only that, she broke down just the inconsistencies between the beginning, before the trial even started, the interrogations, all the way leading up to this documentary. So I will give you guys a link to her channel as well. I'll put a link to her channel in the description and you guys can check it out. But I've heard she's very, very thorough and I'm super, super stoked. But first, can we just talk about how much of a pedestal they've been putting Casey on? The title of this was like, Casey Anthony talks about her exploration into law and crime after the trial. What is this? Like, Casey Anthony is so smart.
Many of you guys are probably aware that there is a new 3-part documentary on regarding Casey Anthony.
Yes,
in this
Annie.
documentary, she gives her first on-camera interview in 10 years where she gives her version of events and her story, her truth behind the infamous case of her daughter, Kaylee Anthony. She retells a lot of stuff that we already had heard in the trial, but she also drops quite a few new bombshells. And I'll be honest, Casey's latest interview seems to have dredged up a number.
Dude, okay, hold on. I gotta say this. This is killing me. When Casey was initially going through this trial, she thought this was it. This was gonna be the biggest thing of her life. The media storm, the press, the headlines. Like, this was crazy. If you were Casey 10 years ago, you would have thought that this was the big event. You wouldn't have held on to those big bombshells for years later for a documentary that you didn't even know was gonna happen. Why would she hold on to that information? If you thought you were about to go to jail for life, you would give them everything you had. Like,
I myself watched all 3 episodes, although I had initially told myself I wasn't going to. I did.
that's okay, Annie. We appreciate
I
you.
identified quite a few inconsistencies as well.
Oh my
so
God.
today we are going to talk about all of those. And guys, I'm heated. I am heated. I was literally shaking as I was watching the first episode. And I want to just remind you, this is just my opinion. So research the case for yourself, form your own conclusions. This video is just going to be my takeaways.
She had to say that, but we'll see.
10 to Life with Annie Elise
Okay, we got the whole intro.
starts right now.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Now here's what I want to do.
Okay.
I have to say, it felt very one-sided. It felt like the questions were very easy and
Gentle.
very light. It also felt like the interviewer was leading Casey a lot of the time and almost giving her the answers within the question when it was asked. And it just felt very one-sided. In fact, Nancy Grace actually spoke out on this because she was asked to interview Casey.
Because they're gonna make money. That's why they're doing it. And it's on us whether we watch it or not. And I would like to point out that I was contacted by this group when the director was still working on it to have a sit down with Tot Mom Casey Anthony under these conditions. And I said, absolutely not.
She didn't agree to the conditions. Listen, I know some people, not Nancy Grace fans, but basically what she's saying is she knew that they were trying to drive this documentary in one direction. And she told them to go fuck themselves. And I am here for it.
I couldn't ask the questions I wanted. I couldn't control what was happening. No way. Because she's going to do exactly what we predict. She's going to have softball questions and lie her way through it with no one to test her, such as under cross-examination. And this is a way for her to
Control the
get fame.
narrative. Rip them apart, Nancy. She's mad
What
about
concerns
this.
me is that we are not learning anything. There's no furtherance of the truth. There's no furtherance of justice. This is just, in my opinion, a money and fame grab.
She was sitting down and doing the interview head on, almost like the confessional type look. It felt too rehearsed to me.
What I think is truly disgusting is in the trailer, they say,
why talk to me now when you're not getting creative control?
let me just explain to you. From a production standpoint, after the thing is over, after everything's been shot, creative control would imply that Casey is sent all of the footage, all of the videos, final cut downs, everything, right? And that she could go back and say, leave this out, do this, change this differently. They didn't give her creative control. That's normal. Peacock would never do that. It's a high production thing. It just wouldn't happen. But what they can do is before the interview, send her a list of questions that she would approve beforehand. And she could say, oh no, I don't want to answer that. Oh no, I don't want to answer that. So in that, Casey does have control over the narrative and the questions that she asks, because it's like, don't go there. And the other thing is, she would be able to then rehearse her answers to some of the hardest hitting questions. And that's why some people pointed out that it looked like her stress was unnatural. It looked like rehearsed stress and rehearsed emotions.
Theatrical a little bit through her facial expressions. It felt like she was only showing emotion and true emotion when she was defending herself. And when she was defending herself for being blamed for Kaylee being gone and being killed. And every other time she was talking, it just felt like through her facial expressions and her mannerisms that it was rehearsed.
And you might ask, okay, well, when they were asking those questions, why would that make Casey Anthony? Because Casey's whole thing is about control. She wants to control the narrative. She wants to control her environment. And above all, she wants to control her image. So when she's asked questions about Kaylee, it makes her angry because she's not in control of her image. It infuriates her.
And that I had something to say to make my daughter proud, but also to honor her properly.
Ew.
And this is part of that.
Ew.
I still don't know. What happened to Kaylee? I know what eats at me at night. I know what eats at me day after day.
Yeah, the stress about your image.
I know what I lived through, but I'm still defending the fact that I didn't hurt her.
I'm still defending myself. I'm not defending my child. I'm not actually out here saying that my father did it and we need justice for my child. I'm trying to defend my image still.
So Casey starts off this documentary by saying, I lied a lot more than I ever told the truth because the truth was too painful.
That's the stupidest shit I've ever heard.
She says that Zanny was in fact a real person, was a true nanny, but that she was never her nanny. Never. She also says that that apartment, the complex that she took the police to when they were going to her place of work and then to where she dropped Kaylee off last at Zanny's house, that was in fact Casey's best friend's apartment complex. But Zanny never lived there. So again, a sliver of truth hidden within the lie.
When I lied during this and even prior to, there was always at least some part of the truth that was a part of the lie.
And she said that this was the case for all of her lies. And
I don't know if I can explain this that well, but this is so common with liars, and I urge you to think of a time that you've encountered somebody like this. They are hell-bent on trying to make you believe that just a sliver of it, just 1/8 of the story is true, because then they can hang on to that. If you believe that 100% of it is a lie, then you'll discredit everything they say. But they try to confuse you just by making just one little piece, the piece that you can't prove. They tell you that it's true. And they hang on to that. God, I've dealt with that so often.
she admitted to lying a lot. And I'll just say, I feel like this pattern is still a little bit the same based on this documentary. She says she is extremely truthful now, so much so to a fault. She's honest to a fault. She's very blunt. She never lies.
And what is your relationship to truth and lying today?
Who asked that?
I'm a little too honest. I'm blunt. I'm direct. Almost painfully so.
I can't get over that question. Can you imagine even having to be asked that? So, what's your relationship with the truth? It's good. Like, that would be my answer. Like, what the fuck?
In this 911 call, she says that she was the last one to see Kaylee and that she had left her with her nanny. In this call, Cindy, Casey's mother, sounds absolutely hysterical and frantic. Yet when Casey gets on the phone, she doesn't. And it isn't like she just doesn't sound frantic
She's
or hysterical
so calm.
and sounds maybe numb or very stoic. She doesn't sound that way either. She sounds irritated,
Yes.
almost. And this is something that raised red flags way back when this case first started. And hearing it back again, it just reminded me, no, she sounds irritated here. And we're going to talk more about this in a second, but she says that she was in survival mode, and that's why she doesn't sound like herself.
I called a little bit ago, the deputy sheriff.
This is the mother, the grandmother, sorry.
And she has been missing for a month. We're talking about a 3-year-old little girl. My daughter finally admitted that the baby's in the store. I need to find her. Your daughter admitted that the baby is where? But the babysitter took her a month ago. My daughter's been looking for her. I told you my daughter was missing for a month. I just found her today, but I can't find my granddaughter. She just admitted to me that she's been
Wow, that's an interesting tidbit that we didn't know about. Kaylee was missing for a month. She may not have been missing to the world, but she was certainly missing to Cindy Anthony. And a lot of times when we do something shameful that we feel guilty about, we hide away from the people that we feel like will judge us the most. That could make sense why she didn't want to face her mom and she didn't want to face her dad, because something happened to Kaylee.
There's something wrong. I found my daughter's car today, and it smells like there's been a dead body in the damn car. Okay, what is the 3-year-old's name?
Also, I hope she points this out. Later on, somebody tried to say, well, who smelled the dead body in the car? It was Casey's dad, and we now know he's a pedophile. It's right there, you dumb motherfuckers. It was Cindy Anthony, the mother, who has no allegations, who's been squeaky clean through this whole thing, that frantically called 911 and said that the car smelled like a dead body. It infuriates me because I just don't understand how some people can be so thick. And let's just change subjects to something we agree on.
How long has she been missing for? I have not seen her since the 7th of June.
Like, how could you publicly try to lie about such a highly publicized call, you dumb fucks? Sorry.
Hello?
Hello?
Yes.
Can you tell me what's going on a little bit?
I'm sorry?
Can you tell me a little bit what's going on?
My daughter's been missing for the last 31 days.
Mrs. Casey, sounding irritated.
And you know who has her?
I know who has her. I've tried to contact her. I actually received a phone call today, now from a number that is no longer in service. I did get to speak to my daughter for about a minute.
Who has her? Do you have a name?
During her first call with her parents while she's in jail, she says to them, you guys are only worried about Kaylee. That
What
maybe
about
Casey
me?
was confused. Maybe she was sick. And Casey says to her, hey, I saw you on the news. Nice cameo. I can't clinically diagnose anybody, but it's my opinion that she is very narcissistic here.
Annie, I'll say it. She's a fucking narcissist, okay? She's a fucking narcissist. And you know what? I'm really tired of, like, not to Annie, to other people being like, you can't, what credentials do you have? You can't just say that. That's how narcissistic people get away with this, because no therapist is going to tell you to your face that you have narcissistic personality disorder. They'll lose you as a fucking client. I'm very close with a person that has NPD, like, genuinely. And God, it is such an interesting relationship. They're very aware of their, like, narcissism. They're aware of the ways in which they lie or don't care about others. And they just simply don't care. And I've known this person for so long, it's shocking to me. I can still have them in my life. But it's really shocking. I don't know. As I learn to deal with that person, maybe I'll say more shit. But bro, I tell her that she's a fucking narcissist. I tell her this all the time. I hate the tiptoeing around this stuff, because it's like, how are we supposed to deal with this?
Her 2-year-old daughter is missing at this point. And all she is saying to her parents in that first call is, you guys are only worried about Kaylee. Hey, nice cameo on the news. Making herself the victim in all this. Like, why aren't you worried about me? Why are you worried about Kaylee? Hi, because she's your 2-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
She's the victim. That's where the worry should be placed. So everything just feels very disjointed here.
Hold on. This is a really good question. Moose Ming said, how can you tell if you're a narcissist? If you actually are narcissistic or you have NPD, this is something that is probably not going to occur to you until later in life. You will realize that you're a narcissist when you hurt somebody that you should care about and you don't care. And if you're narcissistic, this has happened to you before in the past, but it probably happens over and over and over and over and over again. And then one day there's going to be the time where the light clicks on and you're going to be like, huh, something was fucking weird about that. Most of the time, narcissists choose to ignore it and just not really pay attention to it, but the light will come on one day.
And it doesn't sound like somebody who's in survival mode. It sounds like somebody who's worried that she isn't being looked at as the victim.
Correctional Center. Casey? Mom. Hey, sweetie. Well, I just saw your nice little cameo on TV.
Jesus.
How come everybody's saying that you're not upset, that you're not crying, that you show no caring of where Kaylee is at all?
I'm not sitting here fucking crying every 2 seconds because I have to stay composed to talk to detectives, to make other phone calls, to do other things.
She's so
I can't
angry.
sit here and be crying every 2 seconds like I want to. I can't.
So she says that she hopes everything could be okay, and she actually did tell her that Kaylee could be somewhere familiar, but that she didn't know. And as it turns out, Kaylee was found somewhere familiar, at the park that Casey used to always hang out at during their teen years on Suburban Drive. So again, a piece of truth hidden in the lie.
What's your gut telling you right now? You have the same... me that she's okay. Okay, and your gut tells you that she's close or she's hiding.
She's not far. I know in my heart she's not far. I can feel it.
Okay.
Oh,
Alright.
God.
Now, during the time when Kaylee was missing in those
Oh,
31
please.
days, Casey was out partying, didn't act like she had a child, didn't act like she had
can't
a
deal
child
with that
missing, and had
photo.
no care in the world
I
by the
cannot.
looks of it. We all know she got that tattoo on her back shoulder that read "The Good Life." It was translated to "The Good Life."
Right after her daughter went missing. Like I said, Casey likes to control the narrative. She likes to control her environment, which is very difficult to do when you have a toddler. And she likes to control her self-image. It's not surprising to me that when she has more control of her life and her environment, she gets a tattoo that says "The Good Life."
She explains that the reason she got that tattoo was as an FU to her parents.
That is
She says that I got
wicked.
that to them.
It's
saying,
wicked.
you know, this is an FU to them, almost like an ironic kind of symbol because her life was so tortured and tragic. And so I got this tattoo in rebellion of them. And she covered up her tattoo with a symbol of growth and rebirth, which she proudly shows in the very beginning of this documentary. So it's almost kind of like she changed the narrative of not only the entire story, but also of why she got the tattoo. So once again, she says that she was in survival mode this entire time. The time that Kaylee was missing during those 31 days, all the way until she was found, and then even the weeks after Kaylee was found.
This is always about her. Why was Casey in survival mode? What about your kid?
It sounds like somebody who is irritated that they're getting caught, who is concerned that they're going to further get caught, and they're worried about covering their tracks.
Also, this is a tactic that can be seen in relationships sometimes. I need you to imagine that you're dating a guy, and you can switch roles on this too if you want. Imagine you're dating a guy and you have a suspicion that he's doing something kind of off, and you don't really have the evidence, but you're so sure you start asking questions. If you're kind of a person that's insecure or he knows you don't have the evidence, if he starts acting irritated, like, what? What are you talking about? Come on, I have to get to work. This irritation can be a mechanism to get you off their back. It's a learned behavior. It's very often that like boys will do this with their moms, you know, or girls might do this with their moms, and then they develop it later. So when Casey's talking to this 911 operator, for the longest time, Cindy has been such a pushover that Casey can just act irritated and get her mom off of her back. So then she tries doing it with this 911 operator. And sorry, that's BOZE conspiracy land, but it's just what I do here, okay?
When Casey's dad, George, had his initial interview, he said that Casey called him and said that she was taking Kaylee to Zanny the nanny's house because she had to go to work. That this phone call took place well before they even realized that Kaylee was missing and that she had said she was dropping her off there. Lee Anthony, Casey's brother, testified that Casey also provided this same story of Kaylee's disappearance when she was out free on bond in August of 2008. According to his testimony, Casey told him that the nanny, Zanny, met her at a park in Orlando and held her down with the help of her sister. This was the first time that testimony was given as to how this alleged babysitter actually kidnapped Kaylee. So her brother Lee says that Zanny helped hold Kaylee down with Zanny's sister, that they met at the park in Orlando and then they abducted Kaylee. So Kaylee kept this story going, not only from back when Kaylee first disappeared, not reported missing, disappeared, but all the way until after Kaylee's body was recovered. A story that she made up, not her father. She made up the story that she dropped Kaylee off at Zanny's. She told that to her father. She also told that to her mother. She then said that Zanny kidnapped Kaylee. She kept this story going, something she created, not her dad. And she kept this going well after Kaylee's body was recovered. Throughout the documentary, Kaylee goes on this tour of sorts where she goes to all of these different landmarks that were key in the investigation and in the trial. She goes to her fictitious workplace. She goes to the apartment that Zanny apparently lived in. She goes to her childhood home. She goes to all these places. So when she gets to the apartment complex that she told police that Zanny lived at and where she dropped Kaylee off, she acts mad in this documentary. She points to the apartment, almost mad, being like, that's where Zanny allegedly lives. This is the apartment she lives at, which you made that lie up. You're
so what are you mad about?
So why are you acting mad now, being like, that's the apartment, that's the one she allegedly lived at? No. Why are you mad? You made that lie up. Nobody else did. And you picked that apartment complex because you were familiar with it because your best friend lived there.
Why is Kaylee mad? Because it's everyone's fault except hers, okay? We must find somebody to blame.
The place that Zenaida Gonzalez, or Zanny the Nanny as she was referred to, was...
This just sounds like bullshit.
Allegedly living.
What you said is factually wrong.
Zanny the Nanny, as she was referred to, was allegedly living.
Dude, there was so much emotion in that. The tightened lower lip, the scrunching of the nose, the disgust. Look at that. She is that. Oh my God, I can't believe I got that pause right. That fucking expression.
Allegedly living.
That snarl. She's
She also says that she never had a nanny.
I wonder if she's angry about that lie. Like, I shouldn't have said that. Like, whoa, dude. Whoa, like almost trying to swallow her words, like angry she said that. That was so telling. I can't believe the producers that were trying to save Casey's ass let that in.
She also says that she never had a nanny, period, and that she had never used Zanny. Yet, she also says in this interview that she did want a night out with her friends. So she told her mom that she dropped Kaylee off with Zanny, but that she took Kaylee with her.
The whole nanny thing started because there were times where I wanted to have a night with my friends, but I also wanted to have my daughter there with me because I knew my father was going to be home. So I told my mom, I'm going to drop her off with my friend Zanny.
Now, in that statement, there's a few
now
things
it's her
to
friend.
unpack. Once again, it shows that she's the one who created the lie, not her father, about Kaylee going with Zanny, saying, I wanted a night out with friends, I wanted to party, so I told my mom I dropped her off with Zanny. She's the root of the lie, not her father. But when you look at it again, it also sounds like a half-truth that she says she so often did in the past.
We've also seen that before with Manling Williams, Diane Downs. Like, they want either a romantic life with a certain guy or they want to go out with their friends. Manling Williams went out the night that she murdered her children. They missed the life. I feel like a lot of times society sells to us, some women, I feel like it's kind of changing as Gen Z comes up, but especially when I was growing up, society sells to us that the ultimate goal is to have a kid and to have a family and, you know, have a big happy family. But some people settle into that life early and they get resentful, and acting like that doesn't happen is how we get people like Kaylee that are allowed to pretend to be a loving, happy mother when she clearly was not happy with the life that she was living.
Kaylee did tell her mom when she got pregnant who the father was, but she never mentioned it being forced sex. She also never mentioned it being forced sex to her defense team. And instead, she just said that she will never provide the father's identity and will take it to the grave.
I find it interesting that we see aspects of Kaylee constantly blaming people, blaming Jose, blaming her dad, blaming her mom, blaming everyone. Yet at times she takes these secrets to the grave for other people. Those two things just simply do not match up.
Both the brother and the father were ruled out via DNA. So when she says that this is how she got pregnant in the documentary, it's inconsistent with her past claims that she made to everybody else, which again, very well could be true, and maybe she had too much shame to admit to it until now. But what I will say struck me as odd when she tells the story of what happened to her that night. She says that she was drugged and remembers absolutely nothing. Then she says when she woke up, I was thinking, how did this happen? Why did this happen? She never makes a comment about who did this. I woke up and wondered, why did this happen? How did this happen? Who did this? It never was a question about who did this. But she says she doesn't remember anything from that night, so she wouldn't even remember who had done this. So it indicates to me that she knows who got her pregnant, like she told her mom. Maybe she did know the person she had sex with, like she told her mom and so many other people. And if she did, maybe it wasn't forced as she's saying. So switching gears to the day that Kaylee died. According to Casey, and in this document, it says that her dad, George, woke her up at 9 a.m. shaking her. She says she was taking a nap. She wasn't feeling well. Kaylee was taking a nap with her. They were in her bedroom watching TV. And then at 9 a.m.,
she said she was usually a light sleeper and she was wondering why she was up so late and had to be shook the day before Father's Day. We were home the night before. He's screaming at me, where's Kaylee? She didn't recall Kaylee leaving the bedroom with her.
She jumps out of bed confused, and they start searching the house and searching the property. Then while looking in the backyard before getting back inside, she says that George approached her and he was holding Kaylee. That Kaylee was wet and heavy and appeared lifeless. She also was saying that her dad was yelling at her, screaming as he was holding Kaylee, this is your fault, you caused this. Yet in the next breath says, don't worry, she's going to be okay. So she says he approaches her holding Kaylee being, this is your fault, this is all your fault, you caused this.
This is crazy.
But don't
this
worry,
account
I'm
of
gonna
events,
take care of
it just like
it's going
doesn't
to be
add
okay.
up.
Which feels like a very stark change if he came in hot, but could happen. But let's talk about the inconsistencies here. Casey says that Kaylee would never leave the bedroom without telling her. Even if she had to go to the bathroom, she would never, ever get out of bed and leave the bedroom without telling me. I just want to know, what 2-year-old has the mental responsibility and wherewithal to tell their parent that they're leaving the room to go to the bathroom, or they're plan to leave to leave a room without just doing it? And that's assuming that Kaylee was already potty trained at this young age.
That's so
what
true.
2-year-old? I've never seen one. If you have one, let me know. And my 2-year-old, or my now 3.5-year-old, is pretty dang smart. But what 2-year-old is waking you up being like, mommy, I'm going to leave the room now. I'm going to go and play.
That is...
I have to go to the bathroom. I'll be back.
Oh my God, Casey,
2-year-old
you idiot.
generally just kind of gets up and does it. They aren't responsible enough to notify you of that.
Something else too, if you notice that when she's telling the story about George, how he woke her up and she searched the house and then he showed up and had Kaylee in his arms. I don't know about you guys, but my brain can't piece that story together. I don't know why. It just can't do it. And normally when I hear someone's account of events, my brain can just piece it together. There are so many holes in that, I think, sociologically, where we're like, people don't do that. That doesn't happen. That like our brain asks these little questions in between each thing, and it just gets so disjointed. I don't know about you guys, but I can't follow that account of events, whereas normally I can follow a story. Why is she so mad about it?
She'd never just leave me there. She knew she wasn't allowed to just be in the house by herself.
And then remember, she said that her dad came up to her screaming, holding Kaylee, yet that he was also comforting. Now here's my question. If she was wet and if she had drowned like it appeared she had, why was there duct tape when Kaylee was found? Which in this documentary,
God,
says,
baby girl, did you forget what story you told? You think you're so good at gaslighting that you're going to tell the story so dramatically that we're going to forget details that have been public knowledge for over 10 years?
There are too many scenarios of what could have happened, but her drowning in the pool is not one. It's not possible.
So we're going to come back to why Casey says Kaylee was wet in a little bit. This same day, which is the day of Kaylee's disappearance, the day everything goes down, the day of reckoning, June 16th, 2008. This is also the day of the infamous Google searches. Google searches that took place the very day Kaylee went missing. Casey was at her parents' house, as confirmed by cell phone pings, when a search was typed in at 2:51 p.m. This search was misspelled, and it was for suffocation. Seconds later, the computer user was pointed to a website with writing that suggested poison yourself and then follow it up with suffocation by placing a plastic bag over the head. And we know that Kaylee was found with a plastic bag.
Just shut the doc down. Shut the whole thing down. Shut it all down.
Turn off the camera. Blow up the mics.
1 minute after that,
that is the
a
biggest
MySpace
cross of
account
shit.
was accessed by this user. Now, Casey was the only person in the house who used MySpace, and she was very active on MySpace. Then, according to pings, Casey left the house at 4 p.m. to go to Tony's house. Initially, the searches were blamed on Cindy, Casey's mother, and I think Cindy even took accountability, saying, you know, I did the one for chloroform. I was trying to search chlorophyll, and it came up chloroform.
I told you guys that Cindy was a pushover. I told you. And I'm sorry, Cindy, but like that's how Casey was built.
So
She
that
took
was
the fall.
quickly debunked.
Yep. She tried to take the
now,
fall.
Today, and back then even,
Good
now
work,
that
Annie.
Cindy did not make those searches. Now in this documentary, Casey needed to find another excuse, another scapegoat, another person who could have done those searches.
Oh my God. This is another, I'm going to lose my mind. I'm going to break my desk in half with my goddamn face. This is the other thing that the narcissist does. When you're all spun up, trying to prove them wrong, and they're lying and they're lying and they're lying and they're lying and they're lying, and then you finally catch them in one lie, they quickly pivot to the other lie so fast that you can't even go back and like firmly say to them, but you lied about your mother making the searches, and that was proven because she was at work. Like, and they talk, you guys know, they talk their way out of that when you try to bring them back. It's so like you can't even, it's like they breeze by the lie so fast, you can't build the list up against them of how many lies they've told, because they just won't submit to a single one. And then they'll try to hang on to a grain of truth within that one lie. Well, she said it. Well, Cindy said it. I don't know what happened. I wasn't there. Cindy said she was there. I don't know. Like, and then you're just fucked. The morality of these people, it makes me want to drive my fist in my own ass. And like, not in a pleasant way, and in I'm angry way, and I'm upset kind of way, and I don't know what to do with this level of physical energy in my body.
So in the documentary, she says that her dad, George, made those searches. But here's the discrepancy.
Oh, now it's George.
At 2:49 p.m. that afternoon, George left for work, and he was confirmed to be at work at 3 p.m. His workplace was approximately 10 minutes from his house. Then at 3:02 p.m., George called the house landline. So Casey is trying to say that George made those searches at 2:51 p.m. to 2:53 p.m., then raced to work, got there by 3 p.m., and then called the landline. That would make sense if he were the Flash. Okay, sure, he raced, maybe.
Oh my God,
also,
Annie is
why would
eating
he
her
log into
up.
her MySpace or her photo bucket? And more importantly, why would he Google suffocation if 5.5 hours earlier he was holding Kaylee's wet, lifeless body? Why would he need to Google a method of murder after she was already dead?
Oh my God. Woo! Woo! Shut it down! Delete the documentary from the servers. Who produced this? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. One in chat, if you would not give your dad your MySpace password at 21. Two in chat, if you can think of a reason why you might do that. This is mind blowing. It's mind numbing. It's fist numbing. It's horrible. It's horrible, dude. It's horrible. Get her, Annie.
To Google a method of murder after she was already dead. Make it make sense. These searches are real, and there's an interview where the defense says that it was the state's fault for never bringing those up in the trial. If they had, this might have all gone down very differently. And the defense even admits that the searches were real and they were floored that it wasn't entered into the trial.
Oh
Jose,
my
the
God.
defense attorney, the lead defense attorney, even looks smug in this interview when discussing it.
Could shake up the Casey Anthony case. Last year, Anthony, you may recall, was found not guilty of murdering her daughter, Kaylee. Now her lawyer tells our Orlando station, WKMG, that the prosecution failed to bring up key computer evidence. It seems to show that Anthony did a web search on how to kill and poison and suffocate on the same afternoon that her daughter was murdered.
We were waiting for the state to bring it up.
Look at the duper's delight.
when
Oh,
they
you can
didn't,
just smell it on him.
We were kind of shocked.
Oh.
Why they didn't bring it up or how it happened, you'd have to ask them about it. I don't understand how no one ever knew about this evidence. We were keeping it close.
He was smiling through that first part of it. He was. Homie hit us with the, like, that's literally what he just did in that fucking interview. Also, let me just say, I've said this before. The state thought that they had an open and shut case. The evidence against Casey was really damning. I don't think that they expected this level of mental gymnastics from Casey or from Jose. They did not expect it. Also, this case was in 2008. And people just didn't really trust the internet then, especially older people, judges, this, that, and the third. You know, Jose could have said a few things and just been like, oh, this wasn't reliable. People didn't really understand how that worked back in 2008, but we can look at that now in 2020 and be like, that's ridiculous. Your dad didn't have your MySpace password. That's insane. I wouldn't even give my mother my Neopets password, okay?
Close to the vest and ready to counterpunch in the trial, and it never came out.
The sheriff's office admits it failed to give prosecutors that information.
So those searches are made. And then after that day, Kaylee was not seen alive ever again. And her body was found 6 months later. Now, this part here is just my opinion as I'm talking through it. If George was confirmed to be at work at 3 p.m. and Casey was still at the house until 4 p.m. and she made those searches at 2:50 while Kaylee was with her at the house, it's my belief that she probably did something to Kaylee between 3 and 4 o'clock, put Kaylee in her trunk, which we know smelled of decomposition, and then drove to Tony's house. And at that point, she was not a mother anymore and was able to live her life the way she wanted. That is just my opinion of when this all went down, because based on forensic, based on evidence, they believe the day that Kaylee did die was June 16th, even though she wasn't recovered until several months later. So as we talk more about Casey shifting this entire murder onto her dad, let's get into the other bombshells she was dropping in this documentary. She says that her dad assaulted her from ages 8 to 12 years old. She says that she started having flashbacks of these memories as she was sitting in jail.
How convenient is that? Wow.
But it's more likely, in my opinion, that this is when she started concocting a story with her defense team and having these flashbacks and memories, because it was part of the narrative that they were going to use to get her to go free, which worked. She also says that she thinks her dad was assaulting Kaylee. Now, I am not an expert, so I am only speaking to my experience with the cases that I've covered and survivors that I have spoken with. But it is pretty rare that an abuser goes from being attracted and targeting someone in the prepubescent years 8 to 12 and suddenly shifts to somebody 2 years old. More commonly, peds target a certain age group as that is what their attraction and fixation is on.
I wasn't going to say that, but Annie said it. Food for thought, okay? Listen, I'm going to be frank with you. I don't believe Casey, okay? But I tread very lightly in breaking down, here are all the reasons why I don't believe someone that's claiming sexual assault, because those reasonings can then trickle into other people, and then they use that as ammunition against assault, like real assault victims. That's just my stance on it. I just kind of sit back here and I'm like, man, I tread very, very lightly, but to be fair, like, fuck Casey. Just fuck Casey.
It's my opinion that she came up with this story as a one-size-fits-all kind of thing, saying, hey, my dad did this to me, or I'm going to say my dad did this to me, so he did it to Kaylee too. He had to have done it to Kaylee too. Let's just say he did it to both of us, because she also had to create a motive for George to kill Kaylee. So if assault was off the table, what would the motive have been? It had to work. So I think she looked at it as a one-size-fits-all approach and said, this is what we're going to say, or her defense team said, this is what we're going to say, and they ran with it. Because very rarely, in reality, is that how it works? Do they have such a broad age range? It's not, he did this to this person, so he'll do it to every person he comes across. That is not how it works. It goes way deeper and way more psychological and performance issues with certain things. Like, it goes deeper than that. So here's what Casey says that she thinks happened. She believes her dad was forcing himself on Kaylee and that he might have accidentally killed her while smothering her with a pillow so that she couldn't fight him off. As Casey says, he did with her in her youth between 8 to 12 years old. So Casey had said that when all of this was happening to her, when she was 8 to 12 years old, that anytime she was resistant or said she didn't want to, her dad would smother her with a pillow until she passed out.
Oh, what
and then he would force himself on her. And she said that this happened. So she's saying that she thinks this is what happened to Kaylee and that he smothered her with a pillow so she couldn't fight him off.
Notice how Casey always kind of tells you the story and then she tells you what she wants you to think.
And I'm not an expert, but going back to cases I've covered and things I've seen and research I've done, generally 2-year-olds and young children in general are the perfect target because they trust these individuals, because when this is inflicted by a family member,
Annie is going
these
off.
kids are so young and they trust this person and love this person so much that they aren't resistant because they don't know what's going on. They don't know what's happening.
They don't know what's going on.
It's
That's
okay. They're being told
so
it's
true.
okay.
It's honestly incredibly disturbing, but true. That is so
fortunately, they don't fight back many of the times, which is why it makes them such easy targets and why
that's why the pillow that doesn't make sense
right now.
Like,
and
why would
it happens so often to kids so young, because they are unfortunately easy targets. So to assume that a 2-year-old has the mental, emotional, and physical strength to fight off her grown man attacker
that they trust,
like a miracle if it's true, but it feels a little far-fetched to me. Again, the reason shit like this happens to kids so often is because they're able to get away with it, because the kids don't fight back, they don't tell anyone, they don't do anything. So to say that this 2-year-old little girl had not only the mental and emotional capacity to know what was going on was wrong, but to vocalize it and to say no, but also to push him off her to where he had to smother this 2-year-old with a pillow so she couldn't fight him off, feels very much, again, just like a one-size-fits-all. Like, I'm going to say that this is probably the reason because this is how it happened to me, or this is how I said it happened to me. It doesn't equate. It doesn't make sense. And implying that little Kaylee had this advanced mental, emotional, and physical capabilities, just like she did with the leaving the room. She would never tell me she would leave the room. Acting as though Kaylee was much more mature and older than she truly was. But let me know what you guys think and if you have seen or heard of this before. But in all of the cases I've covered and anything I've ever researched, I have never seen someone that age, even a few years older than that, be somebody who is so aware of what's happening to where they're fighting their family member off of them at such a young age. But tell me what you think.
What do you guys think about that point? I'm super curious. I feel disgusted by Casey's lies. Sounds right. I agree with Annie. I think children go into shock. Yes, she's spot on. Yeah, these are really great points. And she said herself, she has a 3-year-old. I can't believe they put this documentary out. Oh my God. Like, who produced this? An Amber Heard fan? Let's retrace all the steps. This documentary getting produced is so outlandish to me. I am starting to wonder, whose idea was this? Because it feels like more than just cash grab. I could totally see somebody who was a little hybristophiliac-y that wanted to get close to Casey in some way, and they offered this power. Like, hey, Casey, we can put a story out for you, just because they wanted to get close. Because I don't understand how this happened. Like, the more Annie goes into detail about it, I am genuinely disgusted. It feels socially irresponsible for this to have come out. And I really wonder if there's going to be any other repercussions. And also, if you haven't seen it yet, 1 in the chat if you plan to watch it after this. 2 in the chat if you're not going to watch it, you're good. And it's okay to be a 1. It really is. I personally, I turned it on for a minute and I've turned it off. I have no interest. Like, it's really gross to me.
Also, experts said that her car pretty much smelled the entire time that Kaylee was missing, indicating that she had died very early on into the 31 days of being missing. So was her dad's plan to put Kaylee's body in her trunk and frame her the entire time? Make it make sense. Let's also go back to those Google searches for a minute, assuming that he did make them. Was Kaylee murdered by the pillow during the assault, or was he trying to Google how to kill her? Which one is it? Casey tried to blame the Google searches on George, yet now she was saying that she thinks that because he used the pillow to suffocate Kaylee. But now he was Googling how to murder her? Which one is it? And again, even if the pillow story is true, he woke Casey up at 9 a.m. and then they found Kaylee shortly after that. So if that's what happened, why 5.5 later would he be Googling how to kill her and then log into Casey's MySpace and photo bucket and then race to work and then call the house? Make it make sense. I will say,
dude,
there is something about George that I can't put my finger on that doesn't sit entirely right with me. I don't believe the story Casey is trying to sell, and I don't think he's necessarily guilty of.
I could see that, but I think also it just gives me like, dude, all right, let me put it this way. Here's what doesn't sit right with me about George. If I was spending the night at my friend's house, I would think that her dad didn't like me because he never talks to me. That's the discomfort that I think I get. Like, that's exactly what it would be, but that's about like as far as it goes. I'm sorry, it's just white dad energy to me, which I just don't really understand. But do I think he's a pedophile? Like, no, I don't.
I think that maybe he did help Casey hide the body. I think maybe he did know more. I think it's possible that Casey killed Kaylee accidentally rather than intentionally, and then she went to her dad for help. I think that's all possible. But I think it's more likely that Casey wanted her freedom. She wanted to party. She wanted to be young. Like she said in those Facebook messages of, oh, I'm tied down with my kid, or, oh, the kid's still here, or whatever she was saying. So I think she got rid of Kaylee, then lied to everyone about everything because she didn't want to get caught. And then she got caught, and she had to curate a new story with her defense team. And that's where this came to fruition. And Casey really doubled down on this allegation and George doing this to Kaylee, and really pushed the abuse allegations with the funeral footage and her dad's speech. Now, there are things that he said in the speech that kind of give me cringe or like the ick factor. Nothing that I feel like implied he was actually forcing Kaylee to do these things, but still things that I just kind of felt like, oh, that feels weird. Like when he was like, oh, I just miss when she was out playing and would come up to me in the smell of her sweet sweat, like things like that I was kind of like, ooh, that's gross. Like, I don't know if I would have said that, but nothing that would imply like, oh my God, because you said that, you must be a pede. But in this documentary, Casey was watching the footage and narrating it as though he was standing at the podium telling everybody, I abuse my granddaughter.
Of course, because she wants to drive the narrative that she wants you to believe. But my question to this too is like, in that same speech, did George have extreme descriptors for other things going on? The smell of the day, the light that was breaking outside. Was it a highly descriptive thing that he thought was beautiful? Was he trying to emphasize how much he remembered her and cared about her? Like, dude, they really tried.
Dramatics with her reaction and the things she was saying during this was like she was trying to convince the viewers of this documentary that that's what he was doing.
Yes, dude.
I stand here today, proud to be the grandfather of Kaylee Marie Anthony, who not only meant the world to me, but meant the world to my family, and so many of you that never got a chance to actually hug her, smell her hair, smell the sweet sweat when she came in from outside.
He's even connecting it by saying so many of you that never got to hug her, never got to smell her hair. Like, it's not all talking about him and his perspective. They're overly descriptive and albeit uncomfortable descriptors because he's an old dude trying to be poetic. That's just how it comes off to me. It really is.
Kiss on the cheek, that special hug that I tell everyone, it's so great to get a hug from someone. But to get a hug from a small child That gives me energy like you couldn't imagine.
You know what else I think? Here's just my 2 cents on this. Is it a little weird? Is it uncomfortable? Sure, absolutely. But my other question to you is it oblivious? Pedophiles know that they're doing something wrong. Why would they say it? And if George had a history of being the type of person that wants to put out dog whistles and wants to say nasty things and then get away with it, because there are people that do that, why is this the only documentation of it? So I ask you, is the man oblivious and overly descriptive? Or is he taunting that he's a pedophile in front of thousands and now millions of people?
That's not
He's
normal.
just an old dude. He's just an old dude. That's what I think. But
normal. You're outright telling the world that you're.
And Casey's like, I gotcha. I'm gonna just hang on to that one. I got it.
Jesus Christ.
I'm not going to say how much I'm going to miss things that I won't be able to do with her, because someday I'll be able to hold her hand again in God's heaven. I'll be able to take her in wagon rides. I'll be able to kiss her. I'll be able to smell her again.
Gludon said it's a Joe Biden moment.
So I learned about roaches. I learned about kids jumping on my lap. And I've loved kids jumping on my lap.
Nobody was calling Biden a pedo. They're saying that he just has oblivious, like, old white dude vibes.
He was also the star witness for the prosecution who was seeking the death penalty. So it had a lot of people wonder why he was trying so hard to secure the death penalty for his daughter. Could it be resentment for Casey murdering his granddaughter, who he loved so much? Sure.
Or could it be that he thinks that Casey killed their granddaughter and then accused him of being a pedophile in one of the largest trials in the early 2000s? I don't know.
Or was he trying to shift the blame onto Casey to cover his tracks because he was guilty? And that's what the documentary was trying to push a little bit and ask. So what do you guys think? Now, remember how in the beginning I mentioned how Casey said that she was in survival mode and saying that her dad, George, was the puppet master and told her to lie and that she was just doing everything he told her to do. I call bullshit, because George is a former cop. So there is no way that he would tell Casey to make up lies that would so quickly be proven to be false.
Oh my God.
Get
He
caught,
would know how
such
to
as
lie.
the nanny.
And
such
he
as
brings up
working at Universal
great
Studios.
points here.
All of these things that were so easily disproven.
She
with
brings
it
up
after being with the
phenomenal
police for literally
points.
an hour. If your dad orchestrated this and you were in survival mode and you were doing everything he told you to do and saying everything he told you to say, he would come up with a better cover story and lie given his profession. Not something that would be able to be so quickly disproven like a teenager thought of it. Not to mention, you said on multiple occasions that you're the one that came up with the Zanny the Nanny story. So there's that as well. Now, she makes it a point in this documentary to show her anger with her father and how she's strong now. She's going to call him out for who he is. She's going to put him on blast for what he did. And she even says that there's no statute of limitations in Florida for these crimes. So my question is, if she feels so strongly about this and she wants him to be held accountable, why isn't she going after him legally, whether it's criminally or civilly? I mean, surely there's not enough evidence to go after him criminally, because I don't believe there's a confession anywhere that we know of. Certainly there's no forensic evidence to make this, a big criminal matter. But she could definitely go after him civilly.
I'm gonna say this right now. Listen, if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget the link to Annie's channel is in the description. If you're on Twitch, I'm gonna link it after this. If you like all these points, it's so thorough, it's very well produced, everything like that. Make sure you drop a follow to that channel. This is great breakdown, great points.
And my guess is because she knows that her story would crumble once she is in a courtroom.
Yep.
The total tone for this documentary, my takeaway from it, was that Casey just kept making herself the perpetual victim.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that she was taking accountability for was the fact that she was a liar and lied multiple times.
That is so
several times in the
stupid.
documentary, yes, I lied about that. Yes, I was a liar. Fully acknowledging it, which, yeah, we already know that. That's already been proven a decade ago. Tell us something new. But she wasn't taking any accountability for anything else here. Instead, she just continuously, in my opinion, was making herself the victim of her father's, the victim of the forced pregnancy with Kaylee, the victim of the public's opinion, the victim of survival mode and being forced to lie, the victim, no accountability. I also think she's now had 10 years to give the performance of a lifetime and to get her story straight. And in my opinion, this just made the public hate her more. Now, I know there are a lot of
3.8 rating on IMDb.
out there, and I'm sure a lot of people still haven't watched this, but based on the feedback I'm seeing now, more people disagree with this than actually look at her and be like, oh my gosh, I believe her now. I don't think she was guilty. But that may sway as more people watch it. Who knows? Let me know what you guys think. But as I said, the tone to me was that she kept making herself the victim in all this. Never once was she taking accountability and saying, here's why I lied about Zanny. Here's why I said this. Here's why I did that. And I just want to remind you about that Nancy Grace statement and the questions. Nancy said the reason she wouldn't do this is because she didn't have control over what questions were asked. No questions were being asked that Casey wouldn't have the answer to or couldn't.
They said that she didn't have creative control, but that doesn't mean that she doesn't have PR control. Like if she has a PR representative, they can say, we need to know the questions before the interview. That has nothing to do with the final result or creative control. And if that's what they did, how incredibly manipulative to do to the audience, to even just cite creative control and assume that people don't understand the processes.
The interviewer never was pushing back on answers that Casey would give. They weren't really asking any of the tough questions. It felt very one-sided. So Casey, I'm just saying, hit Nancy up. If you really have nothing to hide, and if you are the epitome of truth now and honesty now, and you are so honest and so blunt and so direct to a fault, hit Nancy up. Also, if you haven't watched the documentary and you want to watch it but you don't have, there is a YouTube account that has uploaded all 3 episodes, so I will link that in the comment section below.
Damn!
We'll see how long it stays up.
And he said, fight the power, liberation, rebellion. I'm here for it, dude. Oh my God.
This is the time known as the Great Pirate Era.
Guys, what's your verdict? And do you think this was a good idea for Casey to do this documentary? You know what, though? I think there's a strange bit of justice in Casey continuing to publicly humiliate herself, and people still don't believe her. I think that there's just a little tiny bit of justice there.